Dr. Denise Montoya, it is wonderful to have you on Rebels of the Heart. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to you sharing your wisdom and just your rebellious spirit with our audience. And I'll start with a really easy but challenging question. Who are you? Not just in your work, but who are you? How do you really define yourself? Because I know you have a very amazing story. So just tell us a little bit about you.
Gosh, who am I? That's such a great question. I am a wife, a daughter, an auntie, a Nina, a friend. I am someone who takes life passionately and someone who really thrives on just being curious about everything and everyone around me.
That is a great answer, and I can feel your enthusiasm and passion for life just emanating right through the video here. So, and that's been just my impression of you. You know, I know that you're an educator, you're curious by nature, and you're a student in the just the general sense of life. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you. But tell me about your role presently in terms of how you are showing up in the world of business and education, and a little bit about your journey through that process.
So currently I'm an Associate Vice President for Finance Administration and Government Relations. That's my title. And I've been teaching in the higher education space for about 15 years. I teach business management and leadership courses. And I think that's what I have most passion about. I actually was in human resources for about 30 years. And I'm really excited because within the last year and a half, I've been able to venture out into something entirely different. And that's getting out of HR. However, the skills that I acquired as an HR professional have really added value to my current role. And I like to say it's not about solving people problems as much anymore. It's solving a different kind of complex problems in my new role.
That's a great answer. And how would you say the last year and a half has changed your perspective, both in your professional identity as well as in your personal life?
You know, that's a great question. How has it changed me? I think I don't know that it's changed me, or it's just enhanced the need to really understand complexities from all different angles and to figure out how to solve issues. And there's answers to everything. Most of what we do is very solvable. We're not solving cancer. We're not solving, world peace. It's figuring out and listening to people and understanding what the issue is, and then being resourceful to go out and find solutions or find out what the options are to tackle the issue at hand. So I don't know that it's changed me. It's just helped me look at things from a whole different perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think it's changed your approach at all? Do you think you're looking at are you creating new assumptions perhaps in terms of how you're looking at problems, in terms of how you're looking at solutions? Are you, a lot has changed obviously in terms of the environment, just education broadly. I mean, are you evaluating it differently perhaps?
Well, I kind of thrive in those settings. I thrive to be able to tackle new issues and problems that I've not solved before. So it's kind of exciting because it keeps it fresh and it keeps me learning. And I think especially now during COVID, I think that as a society, there's been areas that have become complacent. I think customer service has had some need to be enhanced and revived. And so being able to still learn and still thrive in a time that has such uncertainty has been really exciting. And I think that's kept me going during these uncertain times during the pandemic.
That's amazing. And so to that point, what have you personally been doing in your own kind of self-care or your own time outside of work to really fill yourself up? To, a lot of organizations talk about burnout, they talk about just the languishing that people are experiencing. What are you doing personally? Because I know there's something that you prioritize. Share us a bit about some of your rituals and habits and how you take care of yourself.
I've been trying to read new books. I think that's important. I'm super excited about the new book that's coming out from Brene Brown. I'm already registered to get that. I'm also reading a new book called Adding More Meaning to Life. So surrounding myself with new knowledge is really important. As far as self-care, I think I could do a lot better in that area. I really enjoy walking, but being in conversation with someone while I'm exercising is really important to me as well. So I've been doing some of that. Trying to just eat more healthy, getting more vegetables and fruits into my diet, I think has been important, but I think it's been a challenge during COVID. I really think all of that has been a real challenge, if I'm being honest, in my conversation with you.
I appreciate the honesty. I think that's another thing that I think we're seeing more of, if you will, in facets of professional and personal life blending, is people being really authentic with how they're experiencing different things. Because of the fact we are physically disconnected, it requires a level of intentionality to be more expressive on what's on people's mind. And people asking questions, I think, in a different way as well, to kind of uncover that. I think that goes back to just one of the things that I'm interested in, and I think you probably see this a lot in your role, but like, how are you adapting to respect each person's unique needs, coping strategies, opportunities for growth, opportunities for how they're adapting, changing? I mean, that's an area where I think that we've built models around systems, around a model that was built a certain way, and now it's being changed very, very quickly, right? And so the education system, for example, and moving to remote schooling, to how we evaluate, all these different pieces. How is that affecting your view on some of these things?
I think we're in times where hope is needed most. People need to see the light at the end of the tunnel and know that there is a ray of sunshine coming. And I think that the COVID and during the pandemic, people have really slowed down and spent more time in the quality of their relationships. I know I have. So really taking time to spend time with those that matter most to you and create meaningful memories. It doesn't have to be some extravagant trip anymore. Maybe it's sitting down and doing something fun, playing a game or art projects, or something that's just learning together, but having some laughter and some fun along the way. And I think more than ever, people are actually sitting down and having rich, meaningful conversations and cooking meals together and things that really matter, and making lasting memories in a whole different way. And so I think I've been really cognizant of doing more of that with the people who are most important to me, and also just picking up the phone and calling people. And, I'm one to just dive into what it is that I need in that conversation, but stepping back and really asking, how are you? How are you doing? How are you being impacted right now? What's going on? What's exciting and new that's happening in your life? And just listening to them. I think people need connection more than ever with other human beings.
I love those questions you just posed. I think you're right. And it's the interesting kind of dichotomy between, we have access to technology that allows us to be connected instantaneously with pretty much anything we want, with people all over the world, to communicate in a way that was hard to imagine even 20 years ago, right? And at the same time, the reminder of presence and the short time that we all have here, and the importance of those relationships when they are not able to be necessarily nurtured in the same way, right? And so that carries over to our work. It shows in our personal and our work lives, right? The importance of, to your comments, slowing down. And that's one of the questions I ask often, as I find this fascinating, is that now that we do live in a 24/7 connected world, how does that change people's relationship with time? How does that change how educational models look at time? How does that change how work and organizations look at time, and how people are compensated, and how people value their time? I think we're just opening up a conversation around this, in a way that is, actionable, that people are really, because of the way that things are being blurred, and because of the fact that we're always on. And how do we manage that? And so I would imagine, I'm curious to know, what are the kind of the academic conversations that are happening? What are the government conversations that you're seeing? You have access to such interesting groups that are probably talking about these things. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you imagining?
I think teaching online is becoming just the norm. And I think no matter what, there's nothing that can replace the richest form of communication, and that's face-to-face. And I'm hoping that we continue to realize that and balance the online teaching with some kind of a hybrid model. So what am I hearing? I'm hearing that a lot more organizations are trying to get back into hybrid models, but still offering a lot more online educational options than ever before. You know, that was a tough pivot for higher education, because a lot of people had to become very well in a short period of time knowledgeable about how to communicate using technology tools. I think it was tough, and I think that our kids specifically suffered as a result of that. So it's exciting for them to go back and be with their friends and be in communication with their teachers, at least in the hybrid models.
Yeah, I agree with you on those points. And I was also kind of curious, are you hearing from the business community for graduates or upcoming graduates, is their conversation shifting to how to prepare students for a hybrid workforce? And are they thinking through this around the expectations of employers and employees around how they, is there a conversation happening about that transition and how to make that more productive, more fulfilling, better for all stakeholders from your perspective?
Yeah, I've seen some creative ways in organizations to balance people being able to telecommute and people being able to see each other in person. And one specific organization that I saw that was pretty creative is they created a lot of workspace outside. So they had this beautiful patio and they created conference room tables and kind of lounge seatings, and people were out having conversations using their laptops. And then they also created the work week where people would spend time together as a whole for one day. And then they would sparse out the days and work individually in departments. And then there were days when people could work from home. But they got creative in how they would accommodate both being in person, but also being safe where they could work at home. You know,
see, that's amazing. Yeah, keep going. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
That's okay. I think telework is becoming more the norm and people are feeling comfortable in that space. But I think organizations are trying to be as creative as possible. But I also think there's a demand from employees more than ever who want to work from home. And there's two schools of thoughts from my perspective. Some people are saying that, yes, it's very productive, people working at home. And other people are saying, I feel disconnected and isolated, and it's not working for me. Or the managers are saying, it's not working for us because the people who are in the office are developing strong relationships, and that water cooler talk is important, and the people who are working from home are disconnected. So I think we still have some growing pains to figure out in organization to find out what that best model is for the work that we do.
Yeah, I think it's the complexity that you speak to, and it goes back to what do different personal needs, what are individual people's needs, organizations' needs, how are they trying? And I love the example you shared around experimenting with totally different models and creating completely new constructs. That's what I think I was kind of alluding to, is that there's a chance to rewrite the work week, if you will, right? The work hours, the compensation structures, just the entire relationship that exists between the education to business world transition, or just our economic transition. And I think it's pretty exciting to hear that conversation taking place in that forum. So and I think you have a really exciting place that you're able to kind of influence students and also bring different ideas into that environment. So
I'll give you an example. When I'm teaching courses, and I've been teaching online for quite some time, and I do both in classroom and teaching online, but one of the requirements is I have them be on camera the entire time, and I engage them, and I really, try to bring them out so that there's this sense of community. And I have the opportunity to work in small classroom sizes, but I intentionally call on people so that they feel included in this online environment. And the funnest thing to do is I'll get on early, and the students are really engaged in communicating to each other about their assignments so they're comfortable in this new, boxes of Zoom people online. And so it's exciting to see them engage outside of the classroom through Zoom.
So I love that. And I'm curious, do you see any differences generationally between different student audiences or different, because you've worked with different groups and you do work with different groups. How are you seeing that kind of change across different age demographics, for example?
You know, what's been fun is I had the opportunity to integrate a lot of technology tools into my classroom, and I give them the resources to learn how. So have I seen a difference in generations? No, I actually see an excitement in some of the folks who don't have technology skills who are learning how to do it. So one of the assignments I have is they actually create a learning assignment using videos through a software that's free, Adobe Spark. And yes, they get frustrated, but when they see their final product, it's really exciting. I mean, I'm partnering with an application company that's called Pro Minute Office Hours. And it's an opportunity for the faculty to communicate with the students via video. So instead of text messaging or instead of emails, it's video messaging. And I encourage them to use this to tell me about assignments, or I'll have assignments that I want their feedback and they have to leave me a message via video. Well, I had, this was exciting. I had a minority student who's probably in her late 60s, early 70s, that would leave me daily messages via video. She really enjoyed using it. And so it's fun to see all ages, all diverse backgrounds in class engaging in the use of technology, learning it, and building their confidence that they can use it and they can learn it and they can use it as a tool to communicate.
I love your stories. And actually, there's another question too. And the passion and enthusiasm that student has is great. And I think that technology does have the capacity to be a great equalizer in certain ways, giving people access and opportunity that maybe they would not otherwise have had, which is important. And I think at the same time, in your role especially, you see this, how do we ensure that underserved populations have access to technology in such a way that they can participate? Because that's the thing, we hear about democratizing access, that by people having cell phones, for example, a student in Africa can participate in the global economy, right? That may not, that 20 years ago could not have. And now because of internet and access, they can. But how are you seeing organizations and partners that you work with reconcile that? Because to your point, there's a risk that there could be distinct formations between those who are in office and those who are not. And if we create the structures in such a way that those who are remote are empowered, it allows for more equal opportunity and inclusivity for all. So how are you kind of seeing that conversation evolve?
I think that the pandemic was really a blessing in disguise, because it was from one day to the next that we were all sequestered at home, for lack of a better term, and it forced us all to switch to technology overnight. And so as a result of that, we realized all the gaps that we had. People didn't have computers. People didn't have internet service. So slowly but surely, we still have work to do as a society, a lot of work to do, but it's brought to light the need to access computers, cell phones, and increase internet access, especially in rural areas, at least the state that I'm in. So there's a lot of effort and funds and monies, especially through the COVID funding, the federal funding, that people have now more access than they've ever had to computers and to broad-based internet service, especially in rural areas. So are we there yet completely? No, we've got work to do. We've got more infrastructure changes to make, and we've got to realize also that technology, the efficiency of technology has a short lifespan. And how do we keep up with that and give that access to folks as things no longer work, need to be updated, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it's a really important part. I think that the other thing, as you said, is that we've talked about digital transformation for over a decade, and yet when it came down to it and we needed to adjust, things happened in days and weeks, literally on a mass societal level, right? So it just speaks to when we're truly motivated and incented to change, how quickly it can be done and how quickly leaders can influence that if they choose, right? So that's a really good question, is how do we maintain that level of speed and adaptation without the crisis, for lack of a better term, that we have to do this now? How do we maintain that proactively? How do we keep that level of urgency and leadership that we've seen happen as a result, and keep the momentum for change, to your point, as a positive thing as a result of this?
Honestly, Derek, I think that's the big challenge. I absolutely think that's the big challenge. I think we're in unprecedented times. You know, I think that change is happening more rapidly than it ever has before. And I think people are having a hard time keeping up. I think we need encouragement and support and tools and training to help build people's confidence and self-esteem, to help them realize that they can learn and they can adapt. There's a really good article that I wrote into my dissertation, and I don't have the specific name of it, but it was written in the Harvard Business Review. And it talked about the 4 generations of long-term success. And it said, you know, the first era was really about physical attributes. And if you look at the CEOs, they were all white males. And that wasn't necessarily the critical factor for long-term success rising in an organization. So the second era was you have to be intelligent. You have to be the smartest tool in the box. But yes, intelligent is important. And physical attributes, not as it relates to the 2 that I talked about, are important. But this third era was really about emotional intelligence. And Daniel Goleman coined that concept. And it was really being able to manage your own and others' emotions, right, to be successful. The fourth era that we live in now, and this article was published, gosh, in about 2012. So it's a little dated, but it's still relevant. It was success will depend on your ability to adapt. And I think we know that more than ever, that we've got to be able to pivot when we need to learn, and to come at every problem and issue with true curiosity and resourcefulness to solve what's never been solved before. And you've got to cultivate that in the culture that you have in organizations, that's just the way we operate. We are constantly learning, we are constantly improving, and we never really arrive. And really that defines excellence in organizations. You're never perfect. I'm not perfect, and I'll never claim to know anything. To know everything. I'll never claim to know everything. So we've got to be willing to learn, adapt, and pivot in every situation we're given. Easier said than done sometimes.
I love everything you just shared. I felt like you were reading my mind, because I was literally going to ask you about the adaptability quotient, because of the concept of IQ, EQ, and AQ, which is becoming a concept of how we're really start measuring it. Because I agree with you. I think that the last year and a half, while we're all feeling the level of fatigue in different ways, is just the beginning, right? That it's only going to get faster and faster, and the change is going to keep coming at us. And so we're being literally asked as a society, as a human species, potentially, to elevate our capabilities and to integrate these different intelligence that you were just talking about, on an individual level, on a community level, on an organizational level, because it's going to keep going, right? This is teaching us the new behavior, that adaptability. It's instilling in us a level that we're being forced to adjust to, because we have to. That's really, I believe you're accurate in that. So I think it's a really powerful statement you made.
And we're built to learn. I think human beings are learning organisms. So we have to figure out ways that we're constantly learning something new to keep motivated and engaged. And I think that we thrive most when we're in a learning culture. And I think that organizations need to create those and really cultivate the learning as part of the way we just do business.
So I'm going to ask another question along these same lines, and it's one of my questions that I ask sometimes. We hear increasingly now too, or I should say at some level, we're starting to see more of people talking about the context of love in the workplace, of love in business, of love in leadership. And how are you seeing that showing up in the educational piece? And how are you reconciling that challenge and growth? And to your point, adapting is a part of that. Love it's an aspect of love, right? That it's part of the process, that there's an element that they're not mutually exclusive, but actually part of the same core code. How are you seeing that being taught? How are you personally teaching that? Do you think that's important? And yeah.
I actually do think it's really important. And the reason why is I tend to get really excited and animated about things. And I will say, oh my God, I love Derek. I love Derek. He has such a forward-thinking mentality, and the conversation was so rich. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't want him to misinterpret that. But I tend to have passion and overuse that word a lot. Or, oh my God, did you see that particular thing that Derek did? I just loved it. And I think we're so sensitive about that. I think love just demonstrates that you have care of that person or that particular item, and that it's of quality, and it demonstrates what your culture is about. It's excellence from your perspective. So I think people also need to feel like someone cares about them. And if I think about the best bosses I've had in my career, it's the bosses who cared about me as a person and not just as a producer of work. So I think that that love connection is important, and people need to feel that and understand the difference between, you know, love and at work and love in your own personal life, you know, and maybe it's the same. Maybe it's the same. I'm not sure.
I think it is part of the same. And I agree completely, as you know, with this idea that we can create cultures of caring in the workplace, that the workplace should be a culture of caring, and that there's a way to bring all these different aspects together and ultimately can be regenerative and healing and propel us forward to adapt and change and grow and learn and to be better, to create completely new models, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing business, new ways of learning, and ultimately create a happier, healthier world. So I love our conversation, and in general, whenever we chatted. So I'm really honored that you shared your time and your wisdom with us. And I can feel your enthusiasm and care through our conversations, this one specifically. So what's your kind of closing thoughts, Denise, you'd like to share with our audience about you and about your work and about, you know, just whatever feels true for you right now?
Well, can I share about you instead?
Please, sure, if you'd like to. Yeah, that's a first. Go ahead.
Derek, I am so impressed with the work that you're doing. I love the fact that you're innovating employee assistance programs in a whole different way, because what your model is doing is it's connecting people who have had similar experiences and who have overcome. And I think that's part of the hope factor, right? To be able to work with someone who can relate to you and see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I love the whole model of what you're doing and the whole integration of technology. So I think it takes people like you that's willing to take risks and think about things from an entirely different perspective. But most importantly, to give hope to people that things are going to get better. And they absolutely will get better. And I think the way you're doing business right now to help people in the workplace, that things will get better with the right resources, I think that gives a lot of hope that's needed right now in the workplaces. So congratulations for all your efforts, and know that it's making a difference.
I really, really, really appreciate that. I felt that in my heart. So thank you, Denise. Thank you, really. Well, it's really been a pleasure having you on Rebels, and I'm here to support you in your work and everything you're pursuing. And I really appreciate our relationship, and I'm excited to see how it continues to grow and thrive. So, thank
you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's just wonderful to have these kinds of conversations. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.